good attendance?
We've tried so, at least.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Balaji. Good afternoon.
You?
Good afternoon. I'm well. I'm well. We are well, in fact.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Like a big leap, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Mukherjee sir, good evening.
Good evening, Pat. Good evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Patil, good evening and greetings to you as well.
Yeah, very good evening and greetings to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Hi, Rudvi. Good evening.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Rutvi.
Good evening.
See, now in a literary club, there are so many people, whom I know only by name, sometimes by face. So I would not know who they are, or I would not recognize them otherwise.
I think one option is if the attendees can at least write their names and where do they come from,
Yeah.
The
For example,
institutional details, yeah.
the institutional details in the chat box. That will be a good way to um, just introduce themselves very quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's feasible to all the attendees.
Yeah, because I think we do have a lot of new people, isn't that so?
Yes,
A
yes,
lot of new people.
yes.
Which is a good indication for the health of any club, including this one.
Yes.
That's right, sir.
Yeah. And in this case, quantity matters. Numbers matter.
Yeah.
See, in general, I don't accept the theory that starting more colleges and institutions is improving education. But for a club like ours, reasonably good membership is important.
Yeah, sure. Right. Quite a few from MIT.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. What is the situation of exams there in Pune, sir?
Are you asking?
Or-
Dr. Patil will know better
Yes,
than me.
because for us, the fourth semester's exams would be beginning sometime first week of April.
I see. So that's just about 4 months late, right? 3 to 4 months late.
Yeah, 4th of April to be precise, they begin.
So
And I think before that, the TY people, Parth would know also better. 26th of March would be the
26th
TY.
for the TY.
Yes.
So how many months late are you running thanks to COVID?
Sir, we are on time, sir.
Yeah.
The academic session, the academic calendar is on time.
Asha, but the calendar doesn't begin in July or June.
Yeah, it begins in June, so it ought to end by April, and then the summer vacation in May.
Yeah. Oh, you're in. I thought something is beginning in April.
No, sir, we end things by April end,
Okay,
including assessment and all that.
Yeah.
That's the kind of a target, so that May everything is quiet, and people have run away indoors.
Yeah. Yes. So in fact, that is the most suitable thing to have holidays in May.
Hmm.
We can't have holidays in March.
Okay.
Sir, we already have 27 participants now and it's 5:20. So if you give a green signal, we may begin in a while.
Yes, I think, Sena sir, we can begin, isn't it?
Certainly, we should.
Yeah. Yes, Rutvi, we can begin.
All right. A resplendent evening, everyone. The curator of the literary club and a guide, a mentor for all of us, Professor Prashant Sinha, the chairperson, Professor Sanjay Mukherjee, the speaker, Professor Balaji Ranganathan, committee members of the literary club, and dear attendees. I take this opportunity to welcome you all to the 42nd meeting of the literary club. After the previous session on structuralism, today we would be discussing on Lacanian psychoanalysis. The speaker for today's session is Professor Balaji Ranganathan, who is the chairperson of the Center for Comparative Literature and Translation Studies at the Central University of Gujarat. His areas of interest are Asian studies, interpreting early India, political psychoanalysis, colonial history, early Indian sculptural studies, and Indian numismatics studies. Sir is currently working on early Indian nationalism in Europe and early modern Indian art. Some of his recent publications include the Kheda Satyagraha and the Gujarat Sabha, evaluating the early Sardar Patel, the evolutionary trajectory of Rashtra, and jurisprudence in pre-modern India. We welcome you, sir. We also have with us Professor Sanjay Mukherjee from the Department of English and Comparative Literary Studies, Saurashtra University, who will be chairing the session today. Sir is an eloquent and proficient teacher of literary criticism and theory and poetry. In fact, both Professor Ranganathan and Professor Mukherjee are students of Professor Avdesh Kumar Singh. We are really glad to have you both here with us today, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time out of your schedules and being with us, joining us for this meeting today. So now, without further ado, I would like to request the chairperson to take charge of the session and deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you, Rutvi. I have very little role here. The matrix of desire and the symbolic being the very interesting topic today to be delivered by Professor Balaji Ranganathan. We in the discipline of literary critical studies often come across the word the symbolic, and we look at it as a kind of a figure of speech. We try to analyze literary texts through the symbolic meanings. Whereas from the point of view of psychoanalysis, the symbolic constitutes an entire psychosocial being of a human being. And I as far as my knowledge of Lacan goes, a human being enters the symbolic through the language. And we shall know further more about this very, very interesting person, Jacques Lacan, who around the late 1930s was interdisciplinarily doing psychoanalysis all the time, talking about that he is returning to Freud through linguistics, through topology, a sub-branch of mathematics, and such other, through philosophy, such other disciplines of knowledge. And we are going to be going to have quite an interesting session today. And therefore, I very sincerely welcome my very good friend and professor, scholar. I have known him many years now, and his MPhil thesis was on Lacan. So he is the right person speaking to us here. Welcome, Professor Balaji Ranganathan. The session is all yours now.
Thank you, Sanjay. It's always a pleasure to come to the literary club. It's already meeting number 42, I believe. And very soon we'll be touching 50. That'll be a great event, actually. And I'd like to thank, of course, Dr. Patil of the MIT-ADT University and School of Humanities, because it's so very, very important that a certain platform is created for a few informal meetings and discussions like ours. So in a sense, it brings us to a state where we can end up questioning a large number of concerns with the humanities. And of course, poetry has ever been an association for years back. And I was in Rajkot initially in that department at that time, but it was a wonderful thing to do. The moment to come back. So what I've done is I take it that most people are students here. Am I right? Yes. So in a sense, what I've done is I've geared some of these slides, at least the initial 20 slides, which are pretty basic, and the next 20 slides, which is going to go slightly more complex. Yes. So that at least some of the people who are in a way not trained with Lacan and psychoanalysis would be able to get a few of these basics. Let me put up those slides. If I can just put up the presentation, please. Good. What happened? Supposed to. Why is my the the uploading icon is off actually on this link. Just check that out. Am I audible?
I think Siddhi ma'am, if you could just check whether the screen sharing is allowed for the participants as well.
Yes, sir, it is allowed.
All right. In that case, sir, you should be able to share the screen.
No. No, that's precisely what's not happening in my.
It might be a network issue. Sometimes due to network, uh, it doesn't allow you to share the screen.
Yes. What's going on?
Sir, you are on mute.
there was a small problem with the network. I mean, it keeps flickering. I was talking about this very early. My Airtel doesn't function too well at times.
But I think your slides are visible clearly now, sir.
Yeah,
And you're
very
audible.
good. Very good. Now, as I said, most people would know the basics of Jacques Lacan. Lacan is coming in. Lacan is coming in somewhere in a major way by 1950s, 1960s with the post-structuralists. Yes. And remember, Freud represents the late 19th century and the early 20th century. Yes. Now, on one hand, we understand Freud and the way he examined the human subject in terms of a clinicality. So with Freud, it's the clinical, it's a pathological idea of what we understand as the human self. Yes? His intervention into the idea of the cultural is there, but not so actually present within that model of this. Whether we look at it within the studies of hysteria, or we look at it within beyond the pleasure principle, and so on and so forth, but we don't find the notion of cultural as much as with Freud. Remember, because his training is different. Lacan's training is different. Lacan is functioning within the social sciences. Freud is functioning within the field of medical sciences. So for him, the idea of a culture is more of a pathological determinant which constructs the self and the human being in a way. So within the Freudian case papers, you might not find this idea of the cultural forces as much as culture being one of the triggers, let us say, for the origination of neurosis or the ideas of hysteria. Because even Freud doesn't come to that level of psychosis. So much of his work is centered around the idea of neurosis. So what Lacan does, along with few other people at that particular period, whether Jacques Derrida and Michel Foucault, because they're all writing during that same particular period, and they're looking at as to how culture is shaping personality, and they're all going back. They're all going back to the philological studies of the 19th century. Lacan goes back actually because what he's looking at is that Saussure's ideas of language and the notions of signification. Because what Saussure does, within his work on linguistics, is he brings in this long and the parole. I'm just doing this. These are basics for the post-structuralism, but I'm sure just reminding people. He brings out this long and the parole binary, and he also talks about meaning as something that's generated within a binary condition, right? And he brings out this larger idea, the signifier and linguistic sign. Remember, Saussure, as a part of philological studies within Germany in the 19th century, was an Indologist, basically. So he's actually basically a student of Sanskrit, and his PhD was on the genitive case in Sanskrit. Yes. So a lot of these ideas you would see with Bhatrahari actually. Of course, Saussure is going to refine it a bit more. But if you look at Bhatrahari's formulations and look at Saussure's formulations, you would find some elements of that Indian ideological scholarship entering Europe in a big way via translations and so on and so forth. So what we are understanding as the notion of meaning is actually generated by what you understand as a network of signification or signifiers. And remember, signifiers share an arbitrary relationship with reality because language is a symbolic idea, right? Lacan gives you this the notion of the tree, right? I mean, or take my personal self. I mean, my name is Balaji, all right? But you could call me Sanjay, or you could call me XYZ. It would make no difference to the person in that sense. So what we understand as your components of language, whether it's a noun, it's an adverb, it's a pronoun, whatever form, or a proper noun, for instance, these are symbolic representations of the notions of the real. Yes, so they're not exactly, how should I put it, associated in a pathological sense. Like for example, my liver is my liver. My liver cannot be Sanjay Mukherjee's liver. There's a pathological association with certain objects. Yes, my hair is my hair, my heart is my heart. I mean, there's a pathological association, but not with language, where you have this idea of the irreferentiality of language. It's an irreferential condition, and being irreferential, language can always be slippery. Yes, language has what Lacanian talked about is the signifier is a slippery organism in a way. That's why in his mathematical formulation, when you look at the Ekri, he refers to that as S over S, right? It's a signifier sliding under the signifier. That's the larger formulation, which Lacanian brings out. Anyway, these are still the basics in a way. I'm sure most people would know this. So, yes. But when we come to the Lacanian model, because again, very basic, he talks about three basic stages within the model. He talks about the idea of the real act, he talks about the imaginary order, he talks about the mirror stage, and he talks about the symbolic order and the role of design. Yeah? We look at this very fast, very briefly. Now let's understand this. He talks about the notion of the real act. Yes? It's good to begin with this. Because I'll be ending this. My later slides will be on the Borromean knot. Yeah? So when I'm talking about the Borromean knot, I'll be talking about the larger implications of using or not possessing the initial joint source in a way. But he talks about the idea of the real act in terms of an ontological loss. I mean, it's not like a loss like, for example, I've lost property, or I've lost my keys, let us say, yeah, or I've lost a friendship or something. It's not that kind of loss. He says this is the idea of the real act is something, it's a loss, it's within the unconscious. The notion of the unconscious, where you are, let's say the subject is unable to reclaim in a way, at the same time unable to comprehend. Let me put it this way. Is unable to comprehend the nature of the loss. Yes, because it's subconscious. The moment I get into the subconscious, I mean the subject cannot access the subconscious. That was a part of Freud's older formulation, wasn't it? He said the unconscious is impossible. It's a site of your impression. So how would you be able to access your unconscious? Yes. But though Freud did try to bring about a certain possibility. He says this idea of androgyny. No, for this you have to go back to Plato and the Symposium, right? Where Plato talks about this myth of androgyny. Yes. So right now we are all, in a larger sense, either biologically male or biologically female. Yes. But we are understanding the idea of the biological gender as a physical reality, as a physical idea, yeah, in terms of the body and so on and so forth. But when I say androgyny, but we are not talking about the body here in that sense. What we are doing is we're talking about personality. We're talking about the way a human self would be constructed. So a human self is about this idea of androgyny. You know, the idea of the symbolic male and the symbolic female and so on and so forth. And Plato brings out this idea of the myth of androgyny, and he gives you a story. He says Zeus, the Greek god wisdom, actually, he created a ball of life. And in the process of this creation of the ball of life, he thought that the ball would be satisfied. Because the ball has been infused with life in a way. But he found that the ball of life was extremely lonely. So what Zeus did is he cut that ball in half. With this idea that there would be some notion of companionship. Yeah. But that didn't solve the problem at all. So what happened is the two halves wanted to reunite again. Yes. So the biggest problem was this. What Zeus found was cutting that ball of life into two pieces or two halves did not bring about a sense of completion. The two halves wanted to reunite again. So let's say procreation parts were assembled of the two halves and so on and so forth. That began the circle of life. But what you have here is this myth of androgyny via Plato, where we are talking about this notion of the wholeness or the idea of completion. Yes? And if you look at literatures across the world, especially the scriptural literatures across the world, you're all emphasizing the idea of completeness. You need to be complete, right? Complete male, complete female, so on and so forth. We'll come to that later. Yeah. And what Lacan is trying to bring in is not your impossibility of ever achieving this idea of androgynous wholeness. Yes, we'll come to that. So as I said, one way a human subject could access the notion of wholeness or that need for gratification would be via sexuality, where gratification is understood as a fulfillment of what you understand as a complete subject. And it also brings in this notion of jouissance. Jouissance, the French word for joy, right? It brings you that level, the notion of comfort that you need, the idea of completion that people need, and so forth. Because the lack of philosophy is somatic, which is what is constantly putting people into different, either heterosexual or any other form of relationships, where you're trying to achieve, the human subject is trying to achieve that notion of completeness. That's so very important for the subject. Yes, because the self by itself, the individual self by itself, is cut away from its androgenical status. Because you're cut away from that androgenical status, you'll be constantly in a search for that sense of completion. It could be a soulmate, it could be anybody, it could be any relationship, it could be a passion, it could be mania, whatever you want to call it. But that sense and the notion of completion is something that the human being is constantly, or the human subject is constantly in search of. Yes? And this is what you would understand as the idea of desire, the notion of desire. Now, the next stage that Lacan talks about, one is the notion of the real, like the first stage. The second stage that he talks about is the imaginary order. So when I say imaginary order, it's at the idea of perception, the notion of perception. Yes, where we are talking about the subject's interaction within the environment. Yes, where you're realizing the notion of binary oppositions via senses. For example, if I take the human subject as an infant, right, and Lacan is going to associate that infant with the idea of the mirror, the cultural mirror, of course. He calls it the mirror stage. Yes. Now let's understand the world of an infant before we proceed, because we're talking about the infant in with this idea of a pre-linguistic state of development. So we're not talking about it as an infant who is absolutely capable. Let's say, I mean, it would be an amazing thing if a child is born and is able to, how should I put it, communicate with you directly in terms of language. Yes, but that doesn't happen. It takes at least 3 or 4 years for that infant to grow up before the linguistic sense of the world is acquired, and then the infant enters the world of language. Yes. So what you understand as a world of the infant is largely a world of senses. So when you have an infant subject very early, remember, uh, it's a very natural world for the infant. Yes. So you need to bind that infant. That infant is absolutely comfortable and is absolutely covered up properly, because I mean it's still missing uh, the womb of the mother prior to birth. Yes, so human babies, when they're wrapped up properly, they're more comfortable. Yes. Moreover, their world is a sense of smell. Remember, because they're still not recognizing people in symbolic terms. They might know, the infant would be closest to the idea of the mother, to the notion of the mother, but it's a very physical idea. The mother and the child at this stage is a very physical idea, which is why Freud had a work called Infantile Sexuality, to understand this relationship between the infant and the mother. Yes, it's a very close, intimate relationship that they share. And remember, the infant is a part of the mother's body also, right? So it's that close. So I have my heart in my hand, or I have my liver in my hand. It's that tangible. Yes, the mother-child relation, the infant relationship. But the infant will not be able to recognize the mother in physical terms. Sorry, in symbolic terms. It's only in physical terms that the infant can recognize the mother. You know, the sense of smell, the idea of warmth, yeah, and so on and so forth. In the sense, it's smell, the sense of smell. It's a very natural world. You know, it's a very natural world. It's not a symbolic world in this particular stage. You know, the infant is able to recognize the mother the moment she holds the child, even in a crowd. Yes, it's the sense of smell that is bringing it in. So the nature of the senses, the five senses, you know, whether it's heat, whether it's cold, so on and so forth. Yes, which is something that is affecting the infant. In fact, I was remembering Joyce, especially the novel of his, the portrait of the artist as a young man. And the first 2 pages are depicting just that basic entry of an infant into the symbolic world, or into a linguistic world. So it's just when that infant has entered the linguistic universe, Joyce begins writing the portrait. And Stephen Dedalus there is remembering, you know, the oil sheet, you know, the plastic sheet that is used to prevent infants from wetting the bed and so on and so forth. He says when you wet yourself, it's cold. Otherwise, you know, it's this natural world that the infant is perceiving and is living. Yes. Can I proceed ahead? Am I making sense, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes. So what Lacan talks about this particular phase, you know, where the infant for the first time is trying to interact and understand the idea of the cultural forces that are within or around the infant. And he says the mirror stage, or this what we understand as the identification stage, would occur between 6 to 18 months. 6 to 18 months is the period where the infant would be exposed to everything that's going to determine his life as a whole. Yeah, because it will be the choices, it will be the experiences of the mirror stage. And this is where that infant, up to the stage of adulthood, is going to exercise the idea of choice. So you understand a mirror, remember, as a cultural mirror. It's a cultural identification. And remember, the infant lacks motor neuron control at this particular stage, 6 to 18 months. Yes, so you need to, I mean, it can hardly walk or do things on its own, the infant. Yes. So what you have here at this particular phase, especially of the mirror, is a structuring of the drives. So, I mean, people would have noticed, those who are parents here, uh, people treat the male infant and the female infant in different ways. All right. The female infant, they might not be so rough. The male infant would be treated in a rough way, and so on and so forth. Yeah, they're treated in a different way. They're held differently, right? So, what is basically happening is a structuring of the drives. So, what you understand as parental care, whether it's a female subject or a male subject, it's the structuring of the drives that's basically happening. Uh, in a way, it brings or orients the drives into pleasurable zones, into certain zones within the human body. All right, it'll start structuring it, and then in the process, what you understand as a feminine sense of joy source or a masculine sense of joy source is going to come about. We'll come to this. Yes. Lago also talks about this mirror stage as a méconnaissance. Méconnaissance would be the idea of misrecognition. Now, basically, remember, as I said, the infant is an unstructured subject. Yes, what you understand is it's only from between 6 to 18 months the subject is going to get structured. Until 6 months, let's say that that infant is going to be an unstructured self or an unstructured ego. Lacan in the Écrit and the four fundamental concepts of psychoanalysis would talk about this particular condition as a homelet or a human omelet. Right? When you crack an egg in a saucepan, what you would find is the egg yolk literally spreads. Yes, spreads into a circle, spreads in all four directions. Yes. So so you can't control the yolk of an egg, especially when you crack an egg into a saucepan. That means your ego or your self, or what you understand as the self, is unstructured, is spread out. What culture does is it's going to bring that unstructured self. They'll start restricting it, they'll start shaping it. Right? And in the process, it'll start begin, it'll begin to cause the processes of repression. Yes. So what you understand as the unstructured self that you have with an infant up to 6 months old starts getting structured via parental care, via the symbolic order, via via the tone of language. Let me see, because the language is still not come. The language is about to come, make an entry. So what you have is a structure. You start structuring the drives into what you understand as your current state of repression. Yeah. So some people you would find are cheerful all the time. Some people are grumpy all the time. Some people are scared all the time. Some people would be what? Would be anything. But remember that is only because of certain repressive forces that are formed within your unconscious during the mirror stage. Yes. Not that you can't avoid it. Not that you can't. Not that you can't rectify it. Yes. Because the best way to rectify neurosis and psychosis, more neurosis, less psychosis. What Freud will tell you is to have a recognition of the problem, right? We'll come to that. I mean, sometime later. Yeah. Yes. So what you understand is early identification would happen within the mirror stage. Yes. So what you understand is the experience of the trauma of birth. And remember, birth is not a very happy time, not for the infant or for the mother. Yes. Not a happy time at all. It's not a happy time for the infant because a very comfortable world within the womb is completely disturbed. Yes. And remember, it's a beautiful world. I mean, you have the umbilical cord, which is giving you oxygen, which is giving nutrition to the infant. Yes. It's protected by shock. There's an insulation that's happening against sound, against shock waves, every form. I mean, the womb is a complete world. Yes. So what happens with childbirth is a trauma. I mean, the infant is forced to leave a very comfortable world into what you understand as birth. Yes. And in the process, you're going to have early identifications that are being made, which will be referred to later within adulthood. These early identifications within the mirror stage will be constructing the subject's subjectivity, remember? And you'll also realize that it's this subjectivity that is going to influence the idea of desire. Yes? It's going to influence the idea of desire in a very major way, which is a huge subject of the later half of my talk, the idea of desire, because that's how I titled it, the matrix of desire. Let's understand desire. This is your Gandhinagar. Yes. This is what Lacanian talks about in Ekri, right? Where he talks about the mirror stage. He says it rebounds in the face of the child in a series of gestures in which he experiences at play a relationship between the moments assumed in the mirror stage and between the virtual complex and reality. It duplicates the child's own body. Because remember, what are we all doing? What we understand as an interaction with the symbolic order, or in the process of what we understand as our worldly dealings. We are basically play acting certain roles. Yes. So we have, as I say, if I can say, I might have the 10 faces of a Ravana. Let us. Many faces. Yes. We have different phases within which we interact with what we understand is the idea of the universe. Yes. We have no original face actually. When you see yourself in a mirror and you ask a very fundamental question, who am I? Who is this? It would be a very difficult question for you to answer because it's a performative face that is performing before you. The person in the mirror many times is not you. Yes, it's a performative idea. So what you're having is this idea of what Lacanian talks about as a virtual complex. Yes. So the way you interact with the universe around you, or the self interacts with the world around, is this idea of the virtuality, the virtual complex. Today we are completely within the virtual complex, whether we are functioning within the notion of the virtual media. We have an idea. Yes, we have an idea of a person. The person is absent. Yes. So what you're having is this virtual complex is constantly going to what Lacanian terms duplicate the child's body, person, and things. Yes, it's a virtual space. You know, Jean Baudrillard would talk about it in terms of the simulacra, the idea of the simulacra and the nature of reality, how it changes reality. Yes, where somewhere even the idea of ownership would be absent when you look at the simulacra of objects. I'll come to this. Any questions here so far, all of you? Any questions, please, on anything of all this? Whatever.
I
No,
think
sir.
Balaji.
We are good too.
Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah. No. We will take the interaction at the end of your presentation. That would be a little more.
Interaction. No, I'm not talking about it in terms of interaction.
Yeah.
Is there any concept that has not been understood so far? Because you have a
That's a
doubt
good way
here,
to pause.
you carry the doubt ahead.
Yeah, that's a good way to pause. Yeah. Please, if people have
Any
certain
doubts
doubts.
so far on the theoretical model? What I'm trying to talk about. You carry the doubts right to the end. That's a problem. So we don't want that. Yeah.
So you're just about to end the real, the imaginary, and the symbolic, isn't it?
I'm about to enter the basics of the symbolic, and then I'll be
Symbolic.
getting into desire.
Yes.
Then I'll be getting into desire in a big way. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
This is just to bring about some awareness among people. The initial model, actually.
There is a hand by Madhvi Sood.
Yeah, tell me.
Yes, please.
Tell me.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You've explained so well and so nicely you're going about it. And it's totally new, this topic to me. However, I just had a small little doubt. You mentioned the mirror stages from 6 months to 18 months.
Yes.
That is from the time the conception of the baby in the mother's womb or after the birth of the baby?
After birth.
Okay, but in our ancient scriptures, it is said that the baby, as soon as the baby is the embryo, okay, when it is there in the mother's womb, it is receptive to everything that the mother feels, including the atmosphere, the sound, the vibration. Like we have the example of the famous example in Mahabharata, where Abhimanyu, I'm so sorry, Abhimanyu heard the entire Chakravyuh from the mouth of from Arjuna when Draupadi was listening to him. Only thing is, in between, she slept off how to come out of the Chakravyuh, and hence he did not know the answer to how to come out, and that brought his death at the end.
Madhu, right now, I'm not talking about. You see, every culture, various cultures have had various additions to the idea of what the mirror stage is. Yes.
Okay, sir.
So let's say the Indian scriptures have a particular way of looking at the notion of how the reception of knowledge comes in, or how the mirror stage would enact itself. Yes.
Yes, sir. But it has been observed, like this is true.
So it's not as if let's say because I'm not talking about the Indian case here.
Right.
My basic concentration has been completely on Lacanian. Yes.
Okay, sir.
So what you're having here is within your French notion of post-structuralism, where you're trying to understand what happens with the input. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, got it, sir. No issues. But I just had this small little doubt. Yeah. Thank you so much. But you're explaining the very complex thing in a very nice way.
Thank you.
I could understand it. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
There is probably Pratima also who has raised a hand. Is it?
Could I ask my question?
Yeah, please tell me.
My doubt would be, I would be building on what this lady talked about just now. I would say that why is he then creating a meta narrative about how the self grows at all? Because the moment you create such a meta narrative, for sure it's going to be Eurocentric. If it's going to be Eurocentric, then how do you apply it to individuals or within a particular French culture also? There would be so many differences. So how do when one creates a meta narrative like that, and at the same time one is saying that it has to be very culture oriented. So how does one make sense of all of this jumbling up? That's my point. And I would also say that if we are talking about the way the culture defines it, then how does one relate whatever he's saying to one can relate it easily to maybe Freud, but how does one relate it to Jung? No, so maybe
You.
Jung, yeah. And basically, if you create such meta narratives, how does a meta narrative would always, without fail, would not have anything to do with the individual at all. So it would be essentially a kind of, it would be very
Pratima, I got your
monolithic.
just
It would be very monolithic.
I got your question. I got your question. But your question, I'll take it at the end of this talk, right? Because we are not talking about the homogenization of the cells here, right? So when you're talking about the collective unconscious and the notion of what Jung is talking about, we are not talking about homogenization right now. Here I'm talking about the individual self. So the larger notion of the cultural and the collective notion of the self and the ego is something what Jung talks about. But we don't have an acceptability of Jung as much as what as far as the notion of Freud or Lacan is. I'll come to you. I'll address your question last minute. Chalega?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Can I proceed, Sanjay? Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about this idea of the imaginary order, and we're also talking about the idea of pre-linguistic development. So, as I said, the first 6 months of the self, the infant is basically in a state of pre-linguistic development. All right, the performative pre-linguistic says we don't have. In the first 6 months, you're not going to find the child speaking. So what you're having at this particular moment is, as an infant, you're using a lot of indexical identification, right? Pointing of fingers, so on and so forth. It's a pre-linguistic state of development, a lot of pointing that's happening, and language hasn't come in. All right, you're still at the state where you're using this idea called the unary signifier. All right, this is where now the infant is going to enter the language structures. So initially what you have here would be your indexical identifications would attach to a speech sound. And that's how we introduce infants to language, isn't it? We would point an object and we would utter a particular sound. Whether it's a cow, it's a dog, it's a bird, it's so forth. It's a tree, all right? Uncle, auntie, father, mother, brother, sister, what all you have. They would be attached with a sound, what we understand as the phonetic sound, and the object. Now, let us understand how language functions. You let's say I am speaking right now, correct? Most of you are receiving it. That's how we understand as the process of communication. In the sense, you're able to hear me, and you're able to decode my signifiers, bring them into some notion of what you understand as syntactic alignment, what you think is the syntactic alignment, and you say you've understood. That's why everybody understands differently, right? Because right now I'm talking, many of you are listening, but each of you would be understanding me in a different way. That's because you're receiving what I'm speaking as a series of sounds, and you're bringing in your notions of syntactic understanding as to what it is. So, if for example, if a speaker is clear, uh, everybody's clear. If a speaker is ambiguous, or there's an ambiguity within the discourse of the subject, the receiver is unable, let us say, to receive what the speaker is speaking. So this early identification or the early articulation within Lacan is what you understand as the unary signifier. He calls it the unary signifier. Yeah, this is what you understand as baby talk, right? The first 6 months, the infant is constantly gurgling, right, making sounds, the unary signifier. But it's not language as yet, because language can only happen when the unary signifier would meet the receiving signifier, what you understand as the binding. The unary signifier is not associated with the object as yet. Yes. The moment the word cow becomes associated with the physical object, the cow, that's when the infant enters the symbolic order. So what you understand as language, you would be needing this idea of reporting or referring back. So until then, you cannot make a syntactic sense within which the major notion of Lacan, the signifying chain of desire is going to play out, right? Because desire, remember, with Lacan is a linguistic idea. You have to. Okay, I think I missed this, so I didn't follow that as well. All right. Now, within the model, when he's talking about the idea of desire, we need to understand it's desire which constructs us as subjects. It's desire which drives us as subjects. Lacan would refer to desire in the French as a petit objet. Yes. So what you understand as desire is normally born out of a sense of lack. There's an idea of lack, which is why you have desire. All right. Let's say if you are complete, there would be no lack in a way. Yeah. So basically, what's happening is the subject is driven to fulfill the idea of lack, or what is driven by his sense of lack, his or her sense of lack. Yeah. And you make either, let's say, constructive choices, what you understand as life, or you make disastrous choices of what you understand as life. But remember, it's not the choices that are determining you. Remember, it's actually the source. It's yours. It's your individual notion of lack, which is determining your idea of choice. Yeah. And whatever the infant has experienced in the mirror stage, remember, identifications made in the mirror stage is going to haunt the subject. Let me use that word, haunt that subject, because the subject would be unable to use any other form. So your mirror stage gives you a set of forms. Yes, a set of forms. So across life, what's going to happen is you'll be using those forms to construct your world, your universe in the symbolic order. Let me go ahead. Yes. All right. Now, something very, very fundamental about the idea of desire is the impossibility of desire. Desire is great. Desire is what constructs our universe. Desire is what helps us build things around us. Desire would mean possessions around you. Desire would mean a certain standing within society. The moment you're able to live up to your desire. Now we are understanding desire as the physical possessions around which you're building your life. Yes. So you desire a home, you desire a car, you desire a dog, you desire wealth, jewelry, etc., 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 whatever it is. Yeah. And achievement of all that is your sense of well-being. That's how we understand desire. But if I'm trying to understand desire as why would I desire for a home, or why would I desire for jewelry, or why would I desire, let us say, to purchase a Porsche 911 Carrera, or What's a car that I like? Which car do I like? Yeah, any of the Porsche cars. Yeah. So why would I purchase an Audi or a Porsche or something like that? Why would I want to purchase that? Somewhere I need to understand it's not the object, it's not the Audi, it's not the Mercedes, or it's not the Porsche. It's desire within me. It's a desire that's coming in within my subconscious. It's coming out through my drives. Yes. But within the Lacanian subject, what's happening is you are cut away from the drives. And this is what Freud would understand as his idea of theoretical repression. Repression is basically the subject being cut away from his own drives, and that's leading to the construction of the unconscious, actually. Yes? So we are deriving energy from the subconscious. All right? And we are constantly losing energy within the symbolic. And this is precisely the tragedy of human life, in a way. In a sense, you derive your energy from your from your subconscious, within your repression, and you're going to use that energy within the larger idea of the symbolic order, right? And you're constantly driven by the sense of lack. Now, what this lack is it's a real lack. Yes. I'll be going a bit deeper into the idea of real lack in my later slides, right? But look at the last bullet very closely, where I say that the subject derives energy from the drives, yes, but the goals are manufactured by the symbolic order. Now, this is where you have the realm of the impossibility. Let me put it this way. My drives, my energy comes out through my drives. Yes. That means the goal of my drives should be me. Should be me. This is something that your scriptural tradition will tell you, yoga will tell you. You need to go back to yourself all the time. Whether it's Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, they're all talking about why yourself is so very, very important. In the sense, you go back to yourself. You go back to your own drives. That's where happiness is. But most of us are not looking at ourself for happiness. Our self is a fractured self for us. Our self is our nightmare for us in a way. Yes. So I'm not going to find any satisfaction sitting with myself. It's we are so caught up in this notion, the symbolic ideas of loneliness, symbolic ideas of pain, symbolic ideas of happiness, and so on. Our self is somewhere missing. So most of us, what we are doing is we are moving away from the self, and we are moving towards goals that are manufactured in the symbolic order. As I said, I love an Audi or a Porsche, or I would love a Mercedes. The moment I get it, I'm very, very the moment I get it, I will be very, very happy. That's the larger idea that I have. It's a larger idea most people will be happy. Yeah. But the impossibility of desire is here. Even let us say that Audi that I'm going to purchase might not give me that sense of satisfaction. And this is our fate, isn't it? The fate of humankind, desire. Even if you achieve your state of desire, the desire doesn't bring you happiness. So what do we understand as happiness as a category within psychoanalysis? You'll understand that. Yeah. So you derive energy from the drives, but your goals are not within your drives. Your goals are within the symbolic order, the manufactured goals of the symbolic order. Your goals are within the symbolic world of language. And because your drives and language cannot match, they're different registers altogether. Okay? Are you getting this? The registers are different. Because the registers are different, it's impossible for the subject to connect them together. That's why there's always a gap between what you desire, what you achieve, and the state of mind that you're in. So far, am I clear, all of you? Can I move forward?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Shit, it's already 6:30. Dear God. Okay. Now, when I say the castration or the splitting of the subject, very, very important model idea with Lacan. Now, what you understand as the barred subject or the splitting of the subject, because see, remember, the human subject is caught up within what you understand as linguistic symbolism. You know, the notion of father, mother, brother, sister are symbolic ideas. Symbolic ideas. Let us say we are born of natural parents, right? So I have a natural mother, I have a natural father, or had, let's say. Somebody, let's say there's a human subject who is orphaned very, very early, is brought up, is adopted, let us say. Yeah. Not the natural father, not the natural mother, but still achieves that status of kinship, adoptive or not. The idea, these words, you know, they're symbolic ideas when they say father, mother, brother, sister. Now, the word of psychoanalysis, remember, is a patriarchal theoretical model. So we're talking about the phallus, or we're talking about what in French you term as nom de père, or what Lacan terms as nom de père, or the name of the father. Yes? And you also have this idea of symbolic castration. Now, here we are going back, when I'm saying we are talking to the mother, we're going back to your Freudian Oedipus complex, actually. So, if you look at that, in the entire the traditional myth of Oedipus complex, and the son's love for the mother and so forth, and the separation of the mother and the son later. So this larger idea of the Oedipal is this larger idea of the symbolic castration that comes up. This is what Lacan would term as the barred subject, because it's let us say the relationship in a pre-linguistic stage between the infant and the mother is a very physical idea. Remember, very physical idea. It's a more complete idea for both. But the moment the infant gets into the world of language, and the lady becomes mother within language, it's no longer a physical idea, because you have the incest taboo that comes in now, right? So the incest taboo, the Freudian incest taboo, is a very crucial thing, which is going to create what you understand as a barred subject. Is everybody clear on this? First 6 months is a very intense physical relationship with the mother, and then that relationship is going to deteriorate with the coming of language. Then you have the incest taboo that's going to prevent this union between the infant and the mother. Yes? All right, now we are coming to the matrix of desire, where I'm talking about this graph of desire. Let me see if I can. No, I just kept this up. All right. Now have a look at this. This is graph one. I'm not. I'll not be going too deep into the typology of the graphs of Lacan, because there are at least 7 graphs that he works with. But this is the basic graph, the graph of desire, where he talks about 2 lines intersecting. All right. So what you understand is a signifier S, and you're talking about S hyphen. So you're talking about the signification. So this is a signifier, and this is a signified, and this is your area where the enunciation is happening. Right. Out here you have the barred subject. So it's the barred subject who is enunciating, right? And because he's barred, or he or she is barred, you're not able to achieve the notion of the state of completion. I'll come to this ahead. All right. So what you understand is the graph of desire was first proposed in a 1960 colloquium by Lacan. It was published in the ECRI in one of his works. Now, if you look at this in the schema R and so on and so forth, okay. So what you understand is this graph is a flattened representation, right? It's like a mandala, right? Or a yantra. A yantra is a diagrammatic form of the god or the goddess, right? So you have different yantras for different gods and goddesses. So you have a photo, you have a statue, or you have a yantra. Mantra, tantra, yantra. The three forms. In the same way, you have the graph of desire, which is a flattened representation where you're seeing a signifying chain, what he terms as a pathway, right? Lacan calls it the vector of desire. This particular, it's a vector of desire, right? It's moving across curved lines, and they're crossing one another at two separate points, right? And each line has a symbolic meaning, right? The symbolic meaning, kya hai? We'll have a look at it. Where am I? Yes. Yes. So what you understand as a signifying chain would begin with the linguistic sign. It would progress to the idea of the signification or what you understand as meaning, linguistic meaning. Now it has a duration, and it has a certain sequence, what you understand as a syntactic arrangement around it. Yeah. So your desire has to be. So what you understand as desire, it needs to be. Remember, some people have great desires, big desires. Some people have manageable desires. Some people have small desires. Right? Ever wondered why this happens? Some people desire huge. Alexander wanted the world. Yes. Some people desire in a medium way. Some people have very small desires. Because it's not the size of the desire which is important. Remember, it's the idea of jouissance that informs your desire. That's important. Yes. So what you understand as a vector of desire, and remember your construction of the object of desire is largely based on your subconscious. It's largely based on your mirror stage, actually, your repression just playing out. So your vector of desire is a representation of volition and the will of the spirit or the bard subject, right? So what you're understanding here within this Lacanian graph is a metaphoric understanding. It's a metaphorical idea. Yes. So desire is something that plays it would play through the life of the subject. So it's not something that is ever achievable. Ever achievable. Many times, let us say, the human subject might not even know or understand the object of desire. Yes, it's just playing out. Yes. So we need to understand this, what you understand as the dollar sign, or what you understand, what Lacan terms as a bard subject symbol. Now, what you understand as a bard subject is basically the process of individualization that's happening, and that begins with infancy, right? So how does this process happen? So we understand this as how would an infant respond to the loss of the symbiosis of the mother? Yes, I told you, birth is a terrible idea. Yeah? Birth is a terrible idea, both for the mother as for the infant. The infant, let me tell you, it's traumatic. Yes, you've lost the mother actually. You're separated from the mother. But childbirth is that. Yeah. Otherwise, you are a part of the mother's body. So what you have here is you need a symbol for for understanding this individual subject now. So what was a part of the mother's body has now become a very distinct individual through childbirth. Yeah. So what you understand as as this individual as a bar subject, now you would respond to the loss, right? Right? I mean, let us say you're in a love affair and you lose your partner. It's going to be a huge sense of loss, isn't it? You're going to experience that sense of lack. In the same way, the infant has to experience the notion of loss. But that infant is in a pre-linguistic stage, right? The infant cannot, for example, start writing poetry or like Dante, visualize Beatrice coming to help him get up the inferno. It's not going to happen that way. The infant is in a pre-linguistic stage. So the infant has to respond to this idea by creating this symbol of lack. So what you understand as the real lack, the primordial lack here, is to summon what I mentioned here as to symbolically present the mother, right? So the experience of the mother who returns back to the infant has to happen, right? Has to happen. So you're constantly searching either for the father figure or the mother figure. It has to happen. So you need to search for your mother or you need to search for your father back again. But your problem is the search is going to be in vain. The search is going to be traumatic again for the infant because you're searching, not your, let's say, infant is not searching for the physical body now. The physical body is gone, the mother is separated. What you're searching for would be substitutes for the father figure, or you'd be substitutes for the mother figure. But now you are searching for it within the exigencies of language. You're going to search for it within the ideas of the symbolic order. Within the ideas of the symbolic order. Now, this is where the problems begin for everybody. So, what you understand, did everybody get that? The last couple of slides? Am I audible, please? Did everybody get the last couple of slides?
Yeah, you're certainly audible, but I wouldn't. Yes, okay, we have a response now that people are.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, getting your points, but there is a hand now. Is
okay.
Pooja? Is that a hand from you?
All right. Okay, I can move forward there.
Yeah.
So what you understand as the two pathways, these are the two pathways, isn't it? The path of enunciation, the vector of desire, and your subconscious. This will be your subconscious because you're barred here. Right? Now you need to understand this desire for the primordial object. Now remember, the primordial object is gone. As I mentioned, what the human subject is going to do is you're going to substitute various objects. You're going to substitute various objects for having lost the primordial one. This is precisely what you understand as this particular line what Lacanian is talking about. He's talking about it in terms of the vector of desire, this particular line. Because the desire never ends, desire never gets fulfilled. Yes, that's a larger idea. So the reason why it happens is this loss of your primordial one, what you understand as the real lack. So you're constantly in search to try and replace what you are missing. Yes. Now this brings me to one of the central, very fascinating ideas. This brings me to a very central, fascinating idea with Lacan. Where he talks about the Borromean law. Now, what you understand is a Baromean knot is this intersection. It's a Venn diagram, right? So it's a mandala, let us say. It's an intersection of the three registers of Lacan: the imaginary, the real, and the symbolic. Now, the best part is what is central to all three. Right in the center, what you have here is your object of desire. The objet petit what Lacan puts it, the objet of it. Let me explain this fast to you all right? Then I'll start taking questions. So, understand the Borromean knot as a kind of a structure. Lacan is trying to create a schematics of what you understand as human subjectivity. So you have the three orders. You have the imaginary order, you have the symbolic order, and you have the real. Yes? So what you understand as the imaginary has images, the specular image, the mirror image. It would have the ego, the alter egos, shapes, figures, identifications, disidentifications, the notion of wholeness, fantasies, daydream, you name it. It's all there. The nature of the imaginary. Yes. So we are constantly, what you understand the imaginary order, remember, is a dualistic one, isn't it? I told you, it's only a reflection. There's you and there's your reflection. So there are two ego consciousnesses happening. While the symbolic, what you understand, is the idea of the law, the notion of prohibition, the idea of rules, the idea of language, social institutions, and so on and so forth. So it's the imaginary, it's this tucker, if I can put it that way. It's this collision. The collision between, I won't even call it a collision. If it's a collision, you would be aware of it. I would be aware of it as a subject. But it's so unconscious that I can't, because remember this, it's your imaginary which is constructing your symbolic. Are you getting me? So there's no collision at all. You might either be very comfortable with the symbolic world, or you're going to be miserable in that symbolic world. It's that symbiotic. So it's this imaginary and the symbolic that are making our social reality. Remember, yes. So what you understand as the nature of the real is where you have your jouissance, your enjoyment. It holds your unconscious. It holds your thanatos. What Freud was talking about as a debt drive, all right? Eros, the idea of life, and the idea of thanatos, your notion of the debt drive. It will hold your trauma. It's going to hold your notions of radical contingency. In the sense, at times we find individuals emerging very strong after sudden trauma. Right? People who we thought were very weak suddenly behave like supermen, superhuman beings. It's as if the trauma has brought out their full potential, let us say. It's this radical contingency where yourself is able to come out of all these inconsistencies and gaps that you have within the imaginary. Yes. So the Borromean knot for Lacan is a way by which you understand abstract relations and the structural dependence. The structural dependence of the real upon the imaginary upon the symbolic. But it brings us to two questions. What is the objet petit a? And why is the objet petit a at the center of, and because objet petit a is what Lacan terms as desire, right? For the want of a name. Now, objet petit a would be, if I translate that, it would be small a, the object small a. Right? There's no name. Lacan does not give a name for desire. Lacan does not title this idea at all. But he keeps the objet petit a at the center of the three orders. The Borromean knot, that Venn diagram, the intersection we're talking about, right at the center of it, you have the birth and the play of desire. So if we understand a baby has to become a socialized human being, then you have to give something up, right? To become social, you need to give up some part of your freedom, right? I'm not discussing Rousseau here, was talking about social contract, we were going to talk about Locke, we were going to talk about Hobbes, I would have talked about this idea of the loss of freedom. It's a loss of liberty, right? Citizenship is a loss of liberty, always. So I can't behave. Civilization is a loss of liberty. Remember this. So, to become social, I had to end up losing a part of myself. But then I had this price that I had to pay, remember? Right? The symbolic order is a world of meanings, its rules, its protocols. Yeah, I have to follow all that. Now, if I have to live in this world, I have to follow these things. So, somewhere I'm giving up this idea of prohibition. No? There's always this, I'm encountering the idea of prohibition all the time. That means I need, what you understand as a symbolic order is that the world of language or the world, the real world around us, is going to put some limits to our enjoyment. So we can't enjoy beyond a point. Yes? What we understand as social conditioning, what you understand as social norms, acceptable behavior, and so on and so forth, our sense of enjoyment would be limited. Right? So there are limits, and you're constantly challenging that's what the human subject is doing right now. So we are constantly challenging the limits of that limit. Right? So we know we're not supposed to drink and drive, but people will do it. You know you're not supposed to, let us say, expose yourself to danger. You will do it. You would be defined as being very foolhardy, let us say, or somebody who is very brave, or somebody बहुत daring व्यक्ति है, right? Now these are formulations within language. But what you basically have are individuals who are challenging the limits imposed by the notion of symbolic. So what you understand as valor, courage, bravery is reserved for those who challenge the limits of what the symbolic order has imposed on you. Yes? And because most people might not qualify to be battlers, some people would say, I'm quite happy being a coward, or I'm quite happy not challenging limits. I would like to live within the rules of the law. I like the limitations that are imposed on me by society, let us say. Many people like that, yeah, who are willing to undergo what you understand as a symbolic castration. This is what you understand as the bar subject. The bar subject undergoes a symbolic castration where our unrestricted jouissance that you have experienced within your state of infancy, you can't experience again. Let's say until the age of 3 or 4, whatever you do is acceptable to the world. Whatever the infant does. Right? Kutta hai, girta hai, bhagta hai, breaks something, right? Does all the wrong things. The child is very sweet. Chota bachcha hai, karta hai. That's the larger idea. Yes? That bachcha has not undergone castration as yet. The symbolic castration. After a certain age, let us say, if that person starts behaving like a child again, then you would say, pagal ho gaya. The person is crazy. The guy's gone mad. Yes. Why? It's the same person. It's the same person who are doing the same thing. Let us say, 10 साल पहले करते थे, अब 10 साल के बाद कर रहे हैं. But they're the same person. But at that time, the behavior was acceptable. Now the behavior is not acceptable. What you understand as adultness is important. So what you understand as an adult is this basic idea of your symbolic aspiration that you have gone through within the notions of language. So your real joy source is what you sacrifice, remember, at the altar of symbolic, at the nature of the law. Right? So the process of growing up, what we understand as what you understand as the loss of innocence or the coming of being or the process of growing up. You have lost your real joy source. You sacrifice it at the level of the symbolic. But remember this. We assume this, right? We assume the childhood was beautiful. Adulthood is terrible because too many wrong choices were made in life. We assume everything that happened in that state of infancy was beautiful. But what we need to understand is that state of infancy, what we understand as the beautiful world today, was actually a traumatic idea. You separated from the mother. Yes. So somewhere, what you assume as the joy source of childhood is something that you never really had. That is the méconnaissance, Lacan is talking about, the misconstruction Lacan is talking about. You're assuming you had something, but you actually never had it. Yes. So it's that prohibition of that enjoyment and your acceptance is what you undergo with the symbolic castration. This is very, very crucial, guys. Are you getting it? Has everybody got this? Very, very crucial. You're assuming that you had something, but you actually never had it. That is the mechanism. Has everybody got this? And you won't even know, je ne sais quoi, I don't know why, right? For you, strange. I mean, it's just that I don't know why it's happening. Okay, just say très bien. C'est la vie, c'est très bien. Life is terrible. That's what you say. Let me go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Look, this is what Zizek is trying to talk about. He's talking about, let me skip this side. We don't have much time now. All right. Oh, I've already crossed 15 minutes. Yes. All right. So what we are understanding as our subjectivity, and this is what we feel, right? Because we have lost some of our subjectivity by becoming barred as barred subjects. We've given up some of our freedom. And we want to recapture a part of that freedom, right? So we are basically traversing what we understand as the vector of desire. So this missing self, that missing joy source that you experience, what you think you have lost, is your vector that you understand as the object. So it's this loss of that real object, what you perceive, is what is making you desiring subjects. Yes? And it's also creating specific desires. All right. Okay. This I explained to you. Because you're symbolically surrendering your primordial joy source. Remember, I already spoken of this. Okay. Yes. No, let me come to this particular slide because I've spoken about the rest of the slide. Now, within this Borromean note that you have here, we're trying to understand the imaginary, right? So, why is it and how is it that we lose ourselves within desire? Right? Now, what you understand as the vector of desire is a projection for your missing selves, part of your missing selves. So, you're always in the process. You're always in the process of creating idealized images, right? So, what you understand as Freud would look at it as fantasy. You know, he has extensive work on fantasy. So what you understand as a fantasy is this idea of the idealized image, and it's this fantasy that's giving you maximum joy source, and you have to experience that joy source to understand it, right? Now your problem is you cannot enjoy the object of desire, let us say, but you can only enjoy the image of the object. Now this is something interesting. It's like as I said, as I said, I would love to own a Porsche 911 Carrera, the 1969 model. Yes, a twin carburetor, absolutely basic. There's enough power that's being generated within that car, right? And the 911 Porsche is a classic. Yes. Now it's an image. That Porsche is an image. We are constantly looking at that image, deriving energy from that idealized image. We are happy with that idealized image. The image is in reality not there. Let's say in reality, Ajahn, if it comes to you, then what happens? Let's say you desire something and you achieve your object of desire. Then what happens? It would be a disaster, what Lacan would do. It would be a huge disaster. Because the moment you meet your object of desire, let us say you achieve your object of desire, you're going to face the loss of the self. Your self will fade away because there's no more desire, there's no more vector of desire. Right? No, in the scriptures, we talk about this as nirvana, we talk about this as aham brahmasmi tatvamasi, what Shankara said. The Kevalya Gyan within the Jain Agamas, the coming of grace within Christianity, the idea of fana, the idea of baka within Sufi discourse. It is a culmination, the culmination of desire. You achieved your the notion of desire, and the moment you achieve it, there's nothing else. There's no more on that vector. There's no more enunciation that's happening. Right. So what you understand as this Venn diagram, the Borromean knot, is where all these boundaries are going to disappear. The entire thing becomes without any saw borders within. This is what you understand as idea of the unstructured self. I'm not talking about the idea of the unstructured self here right now, but let us say within this schematic, at the center you have the play of desire between the imaginary, real, and the symbolic. Yeah. So what you understand as the vector of desire here, desire has no image. Remember, desire is only a vehicle. Your virtual object is your repression. Yes. So your repression that's coming out through your barred status is articulated on this line of enunciation, on the vector of desire. You are in a hope to achieve the notion of the state of completion, but you're always in the state of impossible. That is the larger problem of the craft of desire. It's impossible. It's a state of the impossible. Yes? All right. Yes. So what you understand as this matrix, this play of desire is basically this. As the symbolic order constitutes your social reality, the imaginary will give you an avenue where you can make an illusory dream world to escape the reality. And that real is always that point where the symbolic order fails. There's always a gap between your virtual complex of your idea of your ideation and the notion of, and the beginnings of your impression. Yeah. So your subconscious and the real. There's always a gap. Now it's within that space of that gap you have the vector of desire playing out, and it's going to be traumatic. In fact, Lacan expands this entire graph in a major way, right? Because I mean the entire schematics of Lacan would be beyond the scope of this talk, to be honest. So I just included the first graph that he had brought in. The final graph is here. This is your entire Lacanian model, the matrix of desire, as it's playing out. Right from the moment of significance to the state of the voice, all right, the movement, the initial movement from jouissance to your notion of castration, this entire left right hand side, which would signify your barred unconscious, and the right hand side, which signifies a subject on the point of the vector of desire, right? It's a dialectical movement that's happening, all right, from your state of jouissance to the idea of castration and so on and so forth. Anyway, thank you. I think I'll stop here.
Yeah, it's a good place to stop, good juncture rather.
Yeah.
We already have certain questions typed in, I suppose.
Tell me.
I'm there, Ruthvi.
Thank you so much, sir, for this constructive and elaborate session. It was a wonderful experience. I think now we can quickly take the questions from the participants. Participants are free to unmute themselves and ask their questions.
Some of them have written it down. They have typed the text.
Yes.
They were flashing by. I saw a few.
So I think I'll read out the questions.
Or if the participants are still there, they can read out their own questions. Yeah.
Yes. Parth sir, are you there?
Yes, yes, Rutu. Thank you so much, Balaji sir. Indeed, a very elaborate and lucid presentation, sir. My first question is, does the raw material for an artist come from his desires, which then come right from his infancy? So, like, are we supposed to believe that just as desires unfulfilled are superimposed onto a symbolic object, which, Lacan would call goal, or in common parlance, achievement? So then, in the process of literary creation, or in the process of symbolic formation, does this happen as well? And maybe a question supplementary to it is, if goal fulfillment is constantly deferred, as I understand, Lacan believes, then how are we supposed to look at it in the context of the process of artistic creation? So there also, is there some goal which the artist wants to fulfill, and that also maybe some telos that constantly is getting deferred, sir?
Am I audible, please? I think I've lost a network connection right now. I'm trying to reconnect. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
All right, that's good.
I think sir has lost the connection.
Balaji has lost connectivity, and I hope he will join immediately. A good question would be, but like
Yes, sir.
Freud has mentioned about creativity
Yes.
through the process of daydreaming, for example, uh, to what extent has Lacan spoke about it or written about it, talked about it? Because
Right.
at the level of an artistic creation, there is always the desire of the artist to better his or her own creation. Even in simple interviews, when artists come to have their lifetime achievement, and here is Balaji back again. So we will give the question to him. Yes, Balaji. Balaji, you are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Sanjay?
Yeah,
The connection is pretty bad right now. Yeah.
Okay, please.
Right. So what we understand as what Art was talking about, the question that he was talking about, how does a literary artist function? Yes. Would you bring out your notion of repression, or does a psychoanalysis somewhere, does your site of repression somewhere create your idea of art? That was one of the questions. Yes. All right. This is interesting because I mean, when you look at the nature of art, all right. In one way, what you understand as art is something as is seen as a part of the symbolic order, right? So there's a certain acceptability of the nature of the body, let us say, the idea of the body, right? For example, if I understand the Greek world, they celebrated the human body, they celebrated nudity, didn't they? Yes. The same nudity that we find within the Roman world or the Greek world might not be acceptable today. Maybe because the time is different. Yes. So culturally, the body is informed in a different sense today. So today you would have, your notions of the idea of the sacred and the notions of the profane are informed differently in different cultural conditions, in different civilizational time periods. Let me put it this way, right? So, a sculpture like David, for instance, or a sculpture like Venus de Milo by Michelangelo, all right? It's celebrated within the Renaissance, isn't it? Yes. You celebrate the voluptuousness of the body in the Renaissance. Yes. The same notion of the body today would be seen as the notion of the profane. It would be obscene. Are you getting me? Yes. So your remember what you understand as acceptable art is something that's informed by the time. So what you understand as high art, right? The standards, whether you understand it as as Raphael, what Raphael did, or Caravaggio did, or what Da Vinci did, right? What you understand as the high points of Renaissance art is the socially acceptable forms of art within the symbolic order that constructed Florence. Not to say, remember, that you had art which could be described as the profane even at that time. Yes. But
Yes.
this is something that's understood today. For example, Edward Munch, he paints the screen. Yes, it's basically a pastel. He doesn't even paint it. or take Picasso's painting, right? The Damoiselles of Avignon, right? Or Salvatore Dali today, a surrealistic painter. So, but if you look at the early Picasso, say in his, the early Picasso is a very classical Picasso, right? He's a Renaissance Picasso. When he's a young boy, he's drawing, he's sketching. He's a very different Picasso when you look at him in his blue period, or you look at a Picasso in the pink period. Right? Very, very different. The same Picasso is actually different when he enters the Cubist period. Yes? The African phase of Picasso is even more different. So there are different shades to Picasso. So, and what is Picasso doing? He's basically challenging the limits of what is acceptable. He's challenging the limits of what you understand as prohibition. What can be depicted is the most crucial thing. Yes? Did I answer your question, Paul?
Yes, sir. I was wondering that there is this sense of deference, that one finds in
that idea of
Lacan's
deferral.
conception. Yes.
Yes. The idea of deferral is basically when you have the signifier sliding. I told you the signifier is your vector of desire. Your desire, remember, is coming out of your drives. Is a very physical idea. My body needs it. It's a physical idea. But it is expressed within language. I cannot express my desire via the body, isn't it? That's the problem. That would be obscene. I mean, I will be arrested for disturbing peace right now if I act according to my body.
Yes.
So my body produces desire, but the desire is expressed through language. That is the gap. That is where you have the deferral. The language is never consistent. Are you getting me? The signifier is ever lost. It's in a state of deferral all the time.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, there was another question that I had put in the chat box. That Lacan's approach towards this entire thing seems to be individual centric. The individual seems to be at the center. And then even in the context of symbol formation, the artist as the individual seems to be in the center.
Yes.
So, are there other approaches that Lacan has adopted in his other works? I mean, I have not read all of them. So maybe a comparative approach towards symbols, or a cross-cultural approach, or maybe a diachronic approach towards symbols, as in how the meaning of a particular symbol has carried itself across ages.
No, that is where you're going to have a problem. Your problem is you're making a signifier consistent. The moment you have a symbol which goes constant, then you have beaten the idea of deferral.
Right.
So your symbol is never consistent. That's the thing. So your notions of beauty are going to be different across all ages. Ideas of beauty will be different.
So maybe a symbol, let's say rose as a symbol, as it was used probably in earlier times, and then the meaning of rose as a symbol that has sort of distorted over ages with the new experimentations in poetry that came, let's say in the 1960s and 70s, and the way that rose as a symbol was used deliberately, sort of distorted. So the object remains, but the way it was interpreted as a symbol.
That's what you don't. Yeah, that's what you understand as civilizational exigencies, people. Because what you understand as civilization across time, civilizations across time, is basically a change within the interpretation of the symbol itself.
Yes.
Yes. So your symbol is going to move differently across time periods.
Right.
Yeah. So that leads to this idea of inconsistency, and it also leads to a form where you cannot explore anything in terms of a continuum. Because I mean I'm a collector, because I look at art, right? So
Yes.
if I'm looking at the body, how a body has been portrayed, right from Da Vinci to Picasso, the body has changed. The cubist notion of the body is very, very different from what I understand as what the Renaissance portrait, right?
Right.
Or what you have, or the bodies that are portrayed within, let's say, the Ajanta caves. Yes, but there's always been an attempt, remember, to preserve the notion of the sacred. So your sacred symbols tend to stay what Lacan would term as the sign. Those signs don't change. Your swastika will not change. Your images of Jesus will not change. Images of Krishna, images of gods and goddesses will not change. Any change within that would represent a major shift within art. That's why. That's why. If you look,
And in
so
turn, a major shift within the civilizational ethos itself, some kind
within
of
the
a major
civilization
rupture.
ethos itself. What Raja Ravi Varma did when he brought in the oleograph, when he started the lithograph press, and when he started bringing it, was an ideation. It changed the very notion by the way you visualize the sacred. When you look at early art in India, look at the Bengal School of Art. Abhindranath Tagore painted Bharat Mata, the first conception, artistic conception of the country, of the nation, in a way. Yes.
True.
It changes. It changes everything. Yes.
Right.
Anybody else?
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Prithvi, are there other queries? Jot it down.
Yes, I think Sulabha ma'am has some question almost related to what we discussed. Yeah, madam.
Can you read that out?
Yeah, madam
Or is madam there?
Madam has
Sulabha is there.
Okay.
Yes,
Sulabha is there.
yes.
Yes,
The
please.
question was related to the struggle between individual and society. I guess it was related to your current explanation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else?
It makes
Pratima madam.
sense.
Pratima madam, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, but I think most of it is clarified. And thank you so very. I would like to read Lacan yet again. Thank you very much.
So one thing that has happened with this talk is that, and Lacan is really difficult, but again, as a teacher who's attempting to teach these theories, I would put in a very small suggestion. Then rather than reading about Lacan, first try to read Lacan.
Yes.
And then of course there would always be I think Balaji would be open to questions, queries even beyond this talk and interpretations. We can always come back to him. There is, I think, is that Monali asking a question?
Yes, sir.
Please.
So does this mean that any kind of social or legal compliance is an example of a symbolic castration of a loss of innocence or coming of being?
Manali, the very fact that I have a name, I have a family, is my loss of liberty. Yes.
Okay.
Legal compliance, of course, is a loss of liberty. I mean, we are forced. I mean, we are basically we are looking at it in these terms, isn't it? Basically.